Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me.
When your own blood trades you for social status, how far are you willing to let it go? My name's Cole. I'm 39 years old, a systems architect living in Spokane, Washington. I build software systems that keep entire companies from falling apart. Ironic, considering I couldn't see my own family crumbling until it hit me in the face. 3 weeks before my brother Darren's wedding, I was in the middle of a presentation when my phone buzzed with 3 texts from my dad. We need to talk. You're not invited. Darren says you've been too controlling. That last line stopped me cold. I stared at the screen, not quite breathing. My hands actually went numb. I'd spent $85,000 on this wedding. Venue, catering, lighting, flowers, invitations, photographer, even the goddamn open bar. And now I was being cut out like a vendor who overstepped his role. No conversation, no warning. Just a verdict handed down like a pink slip. I don't even remember leaving the meeting. I think I just stood up mid-sentence and walked out. Drove aimlessly for about an hour until I ended up parked at some strip mall just off Division Street. I sat there in my car, engine off, staring at nothing. I felt hollow. Betrayal didn't even cover it. I wasn't just excluded. I was erased. Like I was never supposed to be part of the day at all. Like my money was welcome, but my presence was not. I tried to call Darren, no answer. I tried Mom. She let it ring. I texted Dad. What the hell is going on? No reply. I sat there with my phone on my lap, watching the screen like it might explain everything. It didn't. Just kept showing that last message. Darren says you've been too controlling. Controlling? I hadn't even been involved in planning. I didn't ask for any say in colors, music, or guest list. Hell, I barely knew who was coming. The only time I'd even spoken up was when Savannah wanted to hire a fire eater for the reception. And even then I just asked if it was safe indoors. But apparently having an opinion when you're footing the bill is controlling. After an hour in that parking lot, I drove home. I didn't turn on the radio. Didn't answer my phone when it started ringing. I just sat in my living room, blinds closed, lights off, wondering when exactly I stopped being a brother and started being a line item on someone's wedding budget. I kept replaying that last conversation I'd had with Darren a few weeks earlier. We were sitting at a bar, ironically one I paid for. He told me how grateful he was, how much it meant to have his big brother supporting him. Wouldn't have made it this far without you, he'd said. Guess this far was exactly up to the moment Savannah's family decided I didn't look good in photos. What really killed me wasn't the money. It was the silence. No one called to warn me. No one even pretended to care how I'd take it. They just made the cut and moved on. It's funny how fast you go from the guy who made the day possible to the guy who's too much drama. That night I didn't sleep. I just kept thinking, if they could do this to me after everything, what else were they willing to do? Turned out a hell of a lot worse was coming. Growing up in Spokane, I was the fixer. That was my unofficial title by the time I turned 11. If the lawn needed mowing, I did it. If the dishwasher broke, I grabbed the manual. When Mom's old desktop kept crashing, I taught myself how to build a new one from scratch. I didn't ask for praise. I just figured that's what being the older brother meant. Darren was different from the start. 2 years younger, dreamier, more sensitive. He was always the creative one, according to our mom. That was the nice way of saying he had no follow-through. He dropped soccer after 2 practices, quit piano because the teacher was too rigid, spent most of high school making YouTube videos that got 10 views, then blamed the algorithm when he gave up. Meanwhile, I worked 70-hour weeks straight out of college, moved out early, lived cheap, saved like crazy. By 33, I'd cashed out after a merger and walked away with $1. $8 million in the bank. A quiet win. No one in my family threw me a party. No champagne toast. Just a half-hearted, "Wow, that's great," from Mom over dinner, while Darren talked about how he might start a podcast. That's when things shifted. Suddenly, I wasn't Cole, the brother. I was Cole, the resource. Cole. Anytime something went wrong, car trouble, debt, rent, the calls would come. Just a little help. Just until we catch up. I always said yes, because in my head, I was still the fixer. When Darren got engaged to Savannah, the family celebrated like he'd won the Super Bowl. Savannah was a fashion influencer from Los Angeles with a sharp chin and sharper opinions. First time I met her, she smiled like someone posing for a brand deal, said, "Wow, you're so techie," like it was adorable I still had a job. I didn't like her, but I smiled, shook her hand, and gave her the benefit of the doubt, for Darren's sake. A few weeks after they announced the engagement, I got a call from Mom. They need some help with the wedding. Savannah's parents are tapped out. You know, California's expensive. Then from Darren, we just want something nice, man. You know, classy. Not huge, just elegant. I asked how much they needed. Not much, he said. We'll handle most of it, just a little support here and there. I should have known better. But I kept thinking, just get through the wedding. Then back to normal. What I didn't realize yet was that normal was never coming. Not for them. Because I'd stopped being a brother years ago. I was just a wallet they still called family. It started with just a little. Darren's exact words. We've got most of it covered, he said. Just need some backup in case things run tight. The first transfer was $12,000 for the venue deposit. Non-refundable, he told me. And it's the only weekend they had open this year. I wired the money that afternoon. No contract, no questions. Just trust. Because that's what you do when you're the fixer. You solve the problem and keep it moving. 2 weeks later, I got another call. This time it was Darren and Savannah on speaker. Total catering quote came back higher than expected, Savannah said, her voice all fake sweet. We really didn't expect filet mignon to cost that much. But everyone eats meat, right? It would be weird not to have a premium option. That one cost me $9,000. From there, it snowballed. Savannah wanted artisan desserts, a rotating gelato cart with personalized cones, another $4,000. Then it was the lighting. We're going for an ethereal vibe, she said, whatever the hell that meant. That was $6,000 for mood lights and candles that looked like something out of a music video. They wanted a drone photographer, a champagne wall, a late-night taco truck. Savannah insisted the invitations be hand-painted in gold leaf. That was $15,000 alone. Every time I hesitated, Darren would chime in with, Dude, we're so lucky to have you. He'd pat my back, laugh like it was all a team effort. You're seriously making this day unforgettable. Yeah, unforgettable. I kept spreadsheets. I didn't tell them that, but I did. Every wire, every vendor, every digital receipt went into a folder. Not because I planned to use it, just because I couldn't sleep at night unless I kept track. In total, I'd sunk over $85,000 into this wedding, and that was just what I knew about. They still hadn't sent me the final invoice for the decorator, or the audio setup, or the 3D seating chart Savannah bragged about on Instagram. And through all this, no one asked what I wanted. I wasn't invited to a single planning meeting, no cake tasting, no suit fittings, no email threads. The only time I saw Savannah in person, she hugged me with one arm and said, You're a saint, like I was a sponsor and she was doing me a favor by acknowledging it. Every check I wrote felt like a deposit into a future betrayal I didn't see coming. But the signs were there. The way they spoke about their day, like it was some sacred production I had no right to touch. Like I was funding a Broadway show I'd never get to see. When I suggested having a slideshow of childhood photos during the reception, Darren shrugged. Might not match the vibe, he said. Savannah's aesthetic is a little more curated. Curated. That word again. It kept coming up. Curated guests, curated playlist, curated photo zones, and yet somehow, the guy writing all the checks didn't make the final cut. I thought my support would earn me a seat at the table. What I didn't realize was, I wasn't part of the table. I was the scaffolding underneath it, invisible, disposable. Their plan wasn't to include me, it was to use me. And once better optics showed up, I was going to be quietly erased. At first, I chalked it up to bad communication. I mean, I wasn't looking for a gold plaque or a spotlight. I just figured I'd be, included. Like maybe someone would loop me in on something. Anything. A menu draft, a guest list peek, a mock-up of the seating chart. But every update I got came secondhand, usually from my mom or a post on Savannah's Instagram. The final straw came on a Wednesday afternoon when I stopped by a catering meeting unannounced. Not to micromanage. I was already $10,000 deep into that vendor alone. Just wanted to check in, maybe feel like part of the process. When I walked into the tasting room, Savannah's mom looked at me like I was a plumber who wandered in by mistake. Oh, she said, forcing a tight smile. We didn't know you'd be joining. I should have turned around right then. Instead, I sat through the meeting like a stranger. I smiled, nodded politely. Even agreed when they scrapped the mini sliders and swapped them for crispy beet canapes, whatever the hell those are. Darren barely said a word to me. He kept flipping through the binder Savannah brought, checking off things like crystal flatware and custom linen texture. He didn't make eye contact once. Afterward, I lingered near the parking lot, hoping maybe Darren would walk over, give me the usual, "Thanks for coming, man," or even just a quick fist bump. He didn't. He got in Savannah's car and drove off without saying a word. 3 days later, I was back at the venue to drop off a deposit receipt when I overheard Savannah and her maid of honor talking near the archway out back. They didn't know I was there. I'd come through the side entrance while they were doing a walkthrough with the florist. Savannah laughed, that fake nasal cackle she used when she was feeling bold, and said, "Cole thinks he's a co-planner just because he paid for stuff. Cringe." Her friend snorted. "He's not even invited to the bachelorette welcome dinner." "He thinks money makes him relevant," Savannah said, flipping through a folder. "I swear, it's like charity with expectations." I didn't move, didn't say a word, just turned around, walked back to my car, and sat behind the wheel in silence. It wasn't the money. It was how they erased me from the picture I paid to build. I funded this entire fantasy, the designer tableware, the venue on the lake, the lavender-scented restrooms, and they treated me like a distant vendor with bad timing. I looked back at the timeline. First, they needed help. Then I offered support. Then I became the silent backer. And now, I was nothing more than an obstacle to their image. Some awkward working-class footnote they were hoping to crop out before the final edit. Even my parents didn't say anything. My mom just kept repeating how beautiful the wedding would be. My dad called me generous to a fault, which sounded more like a warning than praise. I started to wonder, did anyone actually think I should be part of this? Was I the only one who saw how messed up this all was? That night, I stared at my phone. I hovered over Darren's name, thumb resting on the call button. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask him how he let it get this far, how he could laugh at my involvement behind my back and still cash every check. But instead, I closed the app and powered off the phone. Because deep down, I knew. They weren't rewriting the story, they had already written it. And in their version, I was just the extra, the guy who funds the dream but doesn't get a line in the script. It happened on a Tuesday. I was mid-presentation at work, walking a client through a new infrastructure map, when my phone buzzed 3 times in a row. I ignored it at first. Then the 4th buzz came with a preview, just enough of the message to freeze me mid-sentence. "We need to talk. You're not invited." I excused myself, heart pounding, stepped into the hallway, opened the full text from Dad. "We need to talk. You're not invited. Darren says it's best. Savannah's family offered $45K. No more drama. Please respect this. It's not personal, just easier this way." I read it twice. Then again, my throat went dry, my hands went cold. Not invited. Easier this way. They actually said that. Easier. As if cutting me out like a problem vendor was just logistics, not betrayal, not blood. I went back into the room, grabbed my laptop, and said I was feeling sick. That wasn't a lie. I left the building without looking at anyone, drove home in a blur, and sat on my front porch until the sun dipped low behind the trees. I didn't even go inside. Just sat there with the text still open, as if staring at them long enough might make the words change. Eventually I called Mom. Her voice was calm, rehearsed. "I know you're upset," she said, "but this is Darren's big day. Don't ruin it with your ego." My ego. I laughed. Not loud, just that kind of bitter chuckle that happens when the absurdity finally hits you. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "I paid for this wedding. $85,000. That's more than your house cost in '98. "I know, sweetheart," she said gently, like I was a child melting down over the wrong flavor of ice cream. "And we're so grateful. But you've been very involved. It's made things difficult." Because I asked where the money was going? Silence. Because I wanted to know why I was never included in any planning? More silence. She started, then gave up. "It's complicated. That's what people say when they want to do something awful without looking awful. It's complicated." An hour later, I got another message, this time from Savannah. "I hope you can find peace in this. Darren and I need to protect our energy from instability. Instability. That word hung in my chest like a weight. I read it 5 times. Then I read it again. That was the spin. That was how they'd explain it to people. Savannah's friends, her in-laws, the Instagram crowd. I wasn't the loving brother who funded the whole wedding. I was the unstable one, the liability, the family issue they bravely chose to protect their peace from. A few hours later, my cousin Jenna forwarded me a screenshot of Savannah's private bridal party group chat. She's not close to me, more of a mutual on the outskirts, but even she felt sick when she saw it. Savannah had written, "We're just not comfortable with him there. He's emotionally unpredictable. Darren says he's always had control issues. The money wasn't a gift. It was leverage." That was the moment the illusion shattered. They weren't just excluding me. They were rewriting me. I wasn't the guy who paid for the lights and the steak and the band. I was the unstable older brother who tried to hijack the wedding with his issues, the one they had to bravely cut off, for their mental health, of course. I wanted to scream, break something, drive across town and show up at Darren's door, demand an explanation face to face. But instead I just sat there shaking, because I realized what it really was. They'd chosen Savannah's rich family, their influence, their photos, their perfect curated crowd, over me. And to do that cleanly, they needed to make me the villain. So they did. They burned the bridge, then blamed me for standing on it. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. No panic, no bargaining, just stillness and purpose. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and logged into every vendor portal I had access to. The venue? Booked under my name, my email, my credit card. I clicked Request Cancellation. The screen asked, "Are you sure you want to proceed?" Damn right I was. Catering. Same story. Non-refundable? Maybe. But I submitted the form anyway. I pulled up the contracts for the photographer, the lighting crew, the florist, the bar service. Most of them were under my billing details. Some would hit me with fees. A few flat out said no refunds. Didn't care. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about principle. I printed everything. Invoices, receipts, terms of service. Made a full paper trail in a folder labeled Darren and Savannah Final. Then I wrote one text, just one. Sent to the family group chat. Me, Darren, Savannah, Mom, Dad. Pay for it yourselves, I'm out. No explanation, no follow-ups. Then I blocked them all. Blocked Savannah. Blocked Darren. Blocked Mom and Dad. Even Jenna. Even though she was innocent. Because I needed silence. And I got it for about 7 minutes. Then came the explosion. My phone lit up like a slot machine. Emails, missed calls, voicemails. Unknown numbers I didn't recognize. Probably Savannah using her bridesmaids' phones. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I poured myself another cup of coffee and sat on my porch as the chaos unfolded from a distance. There was a certain beauty to it. A stillness. Like watching a forest fire burn down a house you never really lived in. 48 hours passed in a blur. A friend of mine, a guy I'd hired to run sound at the wedding, texted me from an unknown number. All he wrote was, "Dude, they're freaking out. Groom's mom cried, photographer bailed, weddings moved to a community golf course banquet hall." I didn't reply, just nodded to myself and stared out across the yard. That night, Jenna, my cousin, broke through the firewall. She showed up at my house with takeout and a look that said she wasn't there to talk me out of anything. "They deserve this," she said, setting the bag down. "You're not crazy." I didn't speak, just sat on the porch steps and listened while she filled me in. Apparently, Darren had gone into damage control mode, trying to salvage what he could. Savannah's parents stepped in with 45 grand, but it didn't go as far as they thought. Most vendors were booked out. Others refused to work with them once they heard the story. "They tried to say you were unstable," Jenna said, "that you pulled out of spite. But people talk. People know." Turns out, when the money vanished, so did the glamour. And once the fantasy cracked, resentment poured in fast. Some of Savannah's bridesmaids dropped out. The custom invitations had already gone out, with a venue that no longer existed. Darren begged vendors to honor the date. No one budged. The wedding still happened, but it was cheap, resentful, and pieced together with duct tape and denial. No fire eater. No drone footage, just rented chairs on AstroTurf, soggy hors d'oeuvres, and forced smiles. And me? I was exactly where I needed to be. Calm, detached, and finally done fixing. They wanted me gone, so I gave them what they asked for, plus the bill. The wedding weekend came and went without me, while Darren and Savannah scrambled to rearrange seating charts and explain to guests why half the vendors vanished. I was 3 states away, holed up in a rented A-frame cabin just outside Flathead Lake, Montana. No reception, no notifications. Just the sound of wind brushing through pine trees and the occasional caw of a crow overhead. I hiked during the day, journaled at night, ate gas station snacks and drank instant coffee with my boots still on. It wasn't glamorous, but it was quiet, and I needed quiet. On the second night, I sat in front of the fireplace with a notebook on my lap and wrote a list. Not of things I'd done wrong, not regrets. No, this list was a chronology of every time I was used. Age 14. Darren borrowed my Game Boy, broke it, and told Mom I'd let him. Age 19. I worked 3 jobs through college. He dropped out of film school and blamed the professors. Age 27. I co-signed his first car. He stopped paying after 5 months. I covered the rest. Age 33. Bought Dad a recliner for Father's Day. Darren showed up 2 hours later with a card and got all the credit. Age 38. Paid for Darren's engagement ring when Savannah said she wanted something ethical and photogenic. The list filled 4 pages. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at it until the fire burned low and the ink began to blur in the dim light. Then I tore the pages out, rolled them tight, and tossed them into the flames. I watched them curl and blacken, like old film melting off a reel. It wasn't just about the wedding, it never was. This had been building for decades. I had spent my entire life carrying this family, emotionally, financially, logistically, and every time I asked for the bare minimum in return, respect, inclusion, a damn seat at the table, I was told I was too much, too intense, too involved, too controlling. That was the role they cast me in, the fixer, the guy who shows up with tools when the ceiling caves in, then disappears before the guests arrive. But now, I was done being cast. On the 3rd morning, I hiked up a ridge just after sunrise. Breathtaking view, cold wind. I stood there for a long time, breathing in pine and frost, watching the fog creep over the lake below. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't feel tight in my chest. I felt still. It hit me in that moment. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. Free to choose where my energy went. Free to give without obligation. Free to walk away when respect wasn't on the table. When I drove back to Spokane 2 days later, I didn't stop by my parents' place. Didn't check social media. I didn't want to see the photos, the forced smiles, the inevitable captions about resilience and making the best of things. Let them pretend. I was done with performance. I unpacked my bag, made a fresh pot of coffee, and sat down at my desk with one thought. This wasn't about a wedding. It was about worth. And from now on, I wasn't putting mine on clearance for anyone. By the time I got back to Spokane, the photos were already up. Darren had posted a carousel of heavily edited shots on Instagram. Savannah in her lace gown, standing under a plastic floral arch at a golf course banquet hall. Darren smiling next to a cake that looked like it came from a grocery store bakery. His caption read, "Despite the chaos, we made it. A fairy tale day with our favorite people. Grateful for love and for new beginnings." It had the tone of someone trying very hard to convince themselves they meant it. I scrolled through the comments. Heart emojis. Stunning. So happy for you guys. But a few people asked questions. Didn't you guys have a different venue originally? What happened to that drone footage you were getting? Wasn't Cole your best man? That last one hit like a slap. Not just because it reminded me what I thought I'd be, but because even outsiders noticed my absence. A few days later, Mom posted a photo of herself in a navy blue dress standing next to Darren and Savannah. Her caption read, "Healing from betrayal, finding joy in the chaos. The wedding wasn't perfect, but love always wins. Healing from betrayal." The words made my stomach turn. Not because they hurt, but because I realized how far the story had drifted from the truth. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the villain in their fairy tale. The saboteur. The unstable brother who backed out at the last second and nearly ruined the wedding. I didn't argue, didn't post a rebuttal. I knew how this worked. Whoever speaks first owns the narrative. But then something unexpected happened. I got a message from my cousin Nate. Dude, I owe you an apology. I hadn't heard from him in months. We weren't close, but we grew up together. He was at the wedding, one of Darren's groomsmen. I should have said something earlier, he continued, but you're not crazy. Savannah's been talking shit about you for weeks. Told people you threatened to cancel everything months ago. Darren backed it up. They said you were acting unhinged. I stared at my phone, the words sinking in like stones in water. Also, he added, you're not the only one they burned. Darren owes my friend Levi like $5,000. Borrowed it last year, never paid it back. Told him to chill because you were covering the wedding anyway. I didn't even know what to say. For a few minutes I just sat there, not angry, not surprised, just numb. More messages trickled in. One from another cousin saying Savannah told people I'd had mental health issues and that I'd made people uncomfortable. Another from an old friend who said Darren had ghosted him after borrowing gear for an engagement shoot. It all clicked into place. I wasn't the first person they used, just the biggest payout. That night I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at a photo of us as kids, me and Darren in the backyard, covered in dirt building a makeshift tent out of bed sheets. Back then I thought I'd always protect him. I thought being the big brother meant being the safety net. But sometimes, the only way to protect someone is to stop catching them when they fall. Truth doesn't always win. But silence? Silence always loses. So I started writing everything down, not to get revenge, but to remember who I was, and to make sure they couldn't rewrite that again. I skipped Christmas that year, didn't send gifts, didn't respond to the group text when Mom asked who was bringing what to dinner. Just let the messages pile up, unread. For the first time in my life, I chose peace over obligation. New Year's Eve, I spent with coworkers, the kind of people who don't ask for money or emotional labor, just pass the chips and laugh at your bad stories. We watched the countdown in someone's apartment in Brown's Addition, surrounded by cheap champagne and a busted Bluetooth speaker. It was normal, uneventful, exactly what I needed. After midnight, I sat on the balcony, wrapped in a throw blanket, looking out over Spokane's frozen rooftops. I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. A week later, I started therapy. It was my coworker Melissa who suggested it. I told her, half joking, that I'd survived a family implosion. She said, "That's not survival. That's just delay." The words stuck with me. First session, the therapist asked, "What brings you in?" And I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I didn't know where to start. We spent a month just unpacking my childhood. I learned a word for what I'd been carrying since I was 10 years old. Parentified. It's when a kid becomes the emotional adult in the family. When your needs don't matter because you're too busy filling everyone else's gaps. That was me. The fixer. The one who showed up. Who paid. Who smoothed things over when Darren got suspended. When Dad lost his job. When Mom cried after the electric bill came due. It wasn't generosity. It was programming. But now, I was reprogramming. One of the first things I did was move my money. Closed the shared savings account I'd opened to help Darren with wedding overflow. Froze the family Venmo group. Called the florist to stop deliveries to my mom's house. Turns out I'd been unknowingly auto-renewing for 2 years. Then I did something I should have done long ago. I put my money where it mattered. I created a small scholarship fund for low-income high schoolers in Spokane who wanted to learn coding. Kids like me back in the day. Ones who couldn't afford camps or laptops but had the spark. It felt good. Like building something instead of plugging another hole in someone else's sinking ship. Mom kept trying to arrange sit-downs. "Let's get coffee and talk this out," she texted. Family doesn't quit on each other. But I had. Quietly. Completely. I replied with simple sentences. "Not right now. I'm not ready. I need space." No lectures, no blame, just boundaries. Dad never reached out. Not directly. But I heard from Aunt Carla that he said, "Cole needs to get over himself." That was fine. I'd stopped trying to change their minds. Then, out of nowhere, I got a text from Dad. Just one line. "Can we meet? Just the two of us." I stared at it for a long time. It didn't come with an emoji or a guilt trip. No mention of Darren. No, "Your mother's upset." Just a request. Small, careful. And somehow that quiet message shook something loose in me more than all their shouting ever had. I didn't say yes. Not yet. But I didn't delete it either. I was learning something. When you finally stop bleeding for everyone else, you realize you've still got a heartbeat, and it's yours now. Almost a year to the day after I got that first text disinviting me, a letter showed up in my mailbox. Handwritten envelope. My name in Darren's scratchy, inconsistent handwriting. No return address, but I knew immediately who it was from. Inside was a folded piece of lined paper. No greeting card, no formal stationery. Just raw, unpolished ink. I was wrong. About everything. I don't know what to say that would make it better, but I need to say something. I let people tell a version of you that wasn't true. And I went along with it because it was easier. Savannah left. Her family stopped answering our calls. Everything fell apart and I deserved it. I miss my brother. I sat at my kitchen counter reading it over and over. It wasn't long, barely half a page. No excuses, no self-pity. Just facts, ownership. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel angry reading Darren's words. Later that week, he asked if we could meet. I picked the place. A quiet coffee shop near the riverfront. The kind where no one knows your name and the music's just loud enough to make silence easier. He looked thinner, tired, like he hadn't slept in days. His clothes were wrinkled, not in a trendy way, in a life's kind of falling apart way. "Thanks for coming," he said, barely meeting my eyes. I nodded but didn't say much. Let him speak. "I thought money fixed things," he said finally. "Turns out it just covered the cracks." I sipped my coffee. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he added. "But I wanted you to know. I get it now. I really do." I could have unloaded years of resentment right then. Could have listed every time I bailed him out, every lie they told, every time they mocked me behind my back. But I didn't. Because something in his eyes told me this wasn't a performance. This was collapse. And honesty. I didn't say yes to everything. But I didn't walk out either. We sat there for an hour, mostly in silence. A few words, a few memories. No fake warmth. Just something real. Maybe for the first time in years. Some bridges don't need to be rebuilt. But sometimes, you can choose to meet halfway.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.